When it comes to Quentin Tarantino's ninth studio film, some people are thinking this.
I think this just might be my masterpiece.
And some people are thinking this.
But not pointing the fingers. They could have been done better.
But for me, my feelings are more like this.
Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about Quentin Tarantino's new film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I have to say this. I have to talk about some plot points in this movie. Not specific plot points, but just kind of how the movie used certain things. So I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So if you're not wanting any spoilers, I will say this. I really like this movie. I love the acting. I love the atmosphere, the look, the feel, the music, everything. That being said, I still can't put this near the top of my Tarantino list. It's somewhere in the middle. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because this was a more toned down story than Tarantino usually tells. Granted, you do get some of the erratic storytelling that he's known for, some of the insane storytelling he's known for near the end of the movie. And there are scenes here and there within it, but this movie is more of a toned down story about an aging actor, his stuntman, and actress Sharon Tate. And while the story is always interesting, and the characters are great, the acting's great. Again, I love just about everything about this movie. I don't know if it was pacing issues. Again, I don't know if it was maybe just not what I was expecting. Maybe I need to take another look at it. But I don't really think, when it comes to the story as a whole, this movie is a masterpiece. It's an interesting story. I dug just about everything about it, but I don't know. It didn't ring with me. It didn't connect with me as much as a lot of Tarantino's other movies. So I do recommend it. It's still a great movie. Here and there for some of the actors in it, probably deserving of some awards, or at least some attempts at awards, but I don't know. There was just something about this movie that it didn't connect with me as much as other Tarantino movies. Maybe because it felt, at least most of it felt a lot different than a lot of Tarantino movies, even though there's a lot of Tarantino in this movie, especially when it comes to style choices and the way he pays homage to things and a lot of the actors in it and everything else. So I do recommend it. But now I'm going to get into, again, I'll dance around the spoilers as much as I can, but I do have to talk about some plot points, or at least, again, the way things happened and the way some characters were used. And I don't want to spoil that for people. So anyway, here's your warning. But first, here's what the movie's about. You have a mostly known for television actor who's near at least what feels the end of his career in 1969 Los Angeles. You also have his stunt double, who can't really get work, and for reasons we find out later. And so he basically becomes the television actor's right-hand man, his chauffeur, and he drives him to and from work, and he basically, again, he's his right-hand man. And then the third story that's being told is about Sharon Tate. And she, of course, this is around the time of the Manson murder. So you kind of at least think you know where the story's going. I'll touch on that in a bit. Again, I won't spoil everything, but I do have to touch on it because maybe that's one thing that bothered me with the movie. But I'll get to that in a bit. As I mentioned earlier, the acting in this movie is phenomenal. Every single character, whether it be your leads, which is Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt or Margot Robbie. Fantastic. Whether it be your supporting characters like Kurt Russell and Al Pacino, fantastic. Even the stunt doubles are great. I kid, but everything in this movie, everyone makes you feel like you're in this time and place, and I loved it. You get to see a lot of Tarantino staples in this movie. You see all sorts of actors that you see in a lot of other Tarantino movies. There's, just too many to name. And you just see all these characters. Every once in a while someone will pop up. It's like, oh, there's Damian Bashir, right? So surprisingly, though, no Sam Jackson. I was really surprised he at least didn't have a bit part. Unless if he's there and I didn't see him. I haven't seen him in any credits anywhere. But I didn't see him in the movie. There are some neat little connections. Everyone tries to connect the Tarantino verse. Because apparently all of his movies are connected, and I've seen some pretty convincing evidence that they are. One example is, at least the one I saw, is Kurt Russell's in this, playing a character named Randy, and he is the head of all the stunt people. He's kind of like their contractor, and it makes me wonder if Kurt Russell is playing his own character's father from Death Proof, which is Stuntman Mike. I don't remember if they mentioned him in the movie, but it just screams, oh, that must be his dad, right? So I thought that was a neat little connection. But again, all the acting in this movie, fantastic. I have nothing bad to say about the acting. When it came to the story as a whole, again, there was 3 different stories. You had the story of Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Rick Dalton, who is, again, an aging television actor. And you're getting to see his downfall mentally, and how he feels about all the, he was this big time actor in the 50s, and now he's becoming a has-been. He's being brought on to make newer, younger actors look good. He's being brought onto these shows, and they show how he reacts to that. They show long scenes of him shooting and him asking for lines and everything, and how that embarrasses him, and he even threatens to kill himself if he messes up another line. And here's the thing, and most times if a character would say, I'm going to kill myself in a movie, if that happens again, I'm going to kill myself, it maybe played off as a joke or something. But here's the thing with the character of Rick Dalton, when he's looking at himself in the mirror and he goes, if you mess up again, I'm going to kill myself, you believe him. And then he goes and they show him shoot the next scene and he knocks it out of the park. And when he's brought on to be this villain in this Western, that's the scenes where you see him where he's got the mustache and the long hair. So he's fantastic in this movie. And again, you kind of see what he has to do to stay relevant, whether or not he thinks his career can go on, just different things like that. You see, if his career is over, as a way to come back. There's just all sorts of cool stories there to be told. When it comes to the story of Brad Pitt's character, he is used in a way to introduce the whole Manson family storyline, because as he's driving around in Rick Dalton's car, he keeps seeing this hippie girl, and he kind of flirts with her the whole time, and he finally picks her up, and they end up at the Manson compound, and Brad Pitt's character Cliff Booth has ties to this place they're at. He used to work there, so there's a story there, and I don't want to say much more about that. But then also you find out why Cliff Booth can't get work in Hollywood, even though they don't show it. They imply something that he did something in the past, and a lot of people don't like him. And he got away with something, and he's not very respected in Hollywood, even though he's a fantastic stuntman. One of my favorite scenes of the movie involves Brad Pitt's character. It's the scenes in the trailer where you see Bruce Lee. I'll say this though, fans of Bruce Lee, if you can't take a joke, you won't like the scene. I dug it. I love Bruce Lee, but I loved what they did with the scene between Cliff Booth and Bruce Lee. It shows them shooting on a set. But then the story that bothered me the most, and here's where I might get into somewhat spoiler territory. I won't say things exactly, but you may be able to figure out what I'm talking about. So I'm warning you. Sharon Tate's story. Margot Robbie, first of all, perfect as Sharon Tate. I loved her in this. I've got nothing bad to say about her performance. But she's almost the MacGuffin of this movie. You follow Sharon Tate around, you see the stuff with her, and it's almost like she still has a desire to work. So then, but with her being married to Roman Polanski, they're insinuating that he just kind of takes care of her. But she goes and she ends up going to see her own movie and things like that. And, but people don't recognize her. But then she's almost there to just, boy, this is hard to dance around. Her character is there. She's almost a MacGuffin of the movie. It's almost a reason for things to happen, but she's not that important. The only reason she's important is because of what happened to her in our history. I guess that's the way I can say it. What happened to her in our history is important. And the director knows this. And we know this, right? That it's of what happened in our history. But you got to remember, this is Quentin Tarantino's history. A history where Hitler didn't kill himself. Hitler was killed by the Inglourious Bastards in a, he was killed in a burning theater, right? So Tarantino uses our knowledge of our history to make this character seem more important than she is to the movie. And maybe that's what I didn't like, is because I wish she would have had more importance to the plot. I'm not saying I didn't like what happened at the end, but I would have liked her to be more important. Her to have taken more part in the finale, I guess is the way to say it. Because again, Tarantino uses a real story to rewrite history, to tell a fairy tale, a once upon a time, if you will. And I guess maybe that just bothered me, that we spent so much time with Sharon Tate's character, or at least when I say so much time, at whatever time we spent with her, and she really technically wasn't important to the third act, except the very, very, very end of the movie. So I guess that's all I can really say about her character. Again, Margot Robbie, fantastic in this movie, but I just didn't like how little she was involved in the third act. I guess that's the best way. I would have loved her to be in it more. When it comes to the way Tarantino tells his story in this, it's very subdued, and we don't get the erratic Quentin Tarantino storytelling till near the very end, where the movie just turns on a dime and gets nuts for a part of the last act. And those parts work fine, but again, I think maybe if Sharon Tate would have been a little more involved. In fact, I have ideas that I think might have worked really well. But if I say them, I'll spoil the movie, so I can't really say them. Because they show Sharon Tate researching a role, like a flashback. She's researching a role, and I think that would have come in handy for the third act. That's all I can really say without ruining it. So, again, the third act's maybe what bothered me the most. Again, I really did like the movie, though. When it came to the whole Charles Manson thing, you only see Charles Manson like twice. Fun little fact, at least I think it's a fact. Damon Harriman, who was Dewey Crow on Justified, plays Charles Manson in this. And apparently he's also supposed to be playing Charles Manson in the show Mindhunter. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't found concrete evidence of that. But apparently that's the way it's supposed to be, or he did already. I don't watch the show, but I just think that's kind of a fun little connection that he's playing Charles Manson not once but twice. So that was a neat little connection. And again, deep down, this is a Tarantino movie. You will see the influence of Tarantino all throughout this movie. But for me, it just, I don't know. I think the third act bothered me. And I think how that, I think they spent too much time with like one character. Then when it cut to another character, you're like, oh yeah, we got that story to deal with. I think pacing was a little off. Maybe we should have cut to different characters a little more to keep them involved. And then again, the third act of not really having much Sharon Tate involvement in what happens near the end kind of bothered me as well. Again, it's still a really good movie. If you're a Tarantino fan, I would recommend it. That being said, if you're not a Tarantino fan, this isn't the kind of, or say you've never seen a Tarantino movie, this isn't the kind of movie that's going to bring you to Tarantino. Like those of us that watched Pulp Fiction for the first time back around when it came out, or Reservoir Dogs even. Those kind of movies that are like, wow, I can't wait to see what they do next. This one isn't going to be one of those movies where you see it and go, wow, I wonder what he did before. If you've never had experience with Tarantino. If you don't like Tarantino, this one's not going to do anything for you. But if you do like Tarantino, I think you still will get enjoyment out of this movie. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and you have anything to say about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or any other Tarantino movie, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. And hey, I'm Geno F. Reynolds, and don't you forget it.